Welcome to another episode of the Kinvestor Report, where we sit down with industry experts to discuss the latest developments in the Canadian small cap sector. I'm your host, Arlen Hanson. As always, please be aware of our standard disclaimer in the description below that no part of this interview should be construed as investment advice. And as I don't know what stocks we're talking about today, Kin may own shares or be compensated by the companies that we discussed in today's interview. Be sure to join our network, subscribe to our channel, comment on the videos below, and share them with like-minded investors if you like what you have to hear. Today, I'm joined by Trevor Hall, CEO and founder of the Clear Commodity Network, a media company focused on resource markets, including metals, mining, oil and gas, and energy. He's also the host of the Mining Stock Daily podcast, which follows the daily news from the mineral exploration sector, and it's an excellent show. I strongly encourage investors to check out his various channels. He ends up talking to a lot of amazing CEOs and has got a great knowledge in the market. So, Trevor, thanks for joining me on the show today. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, what an interesting time to have you on the show. Gold's gone on a $150 mad dash and to all-time highs, but stocks are basically at all-time lows, basically. We didn't get a pre-PDAC run this year in stocks, and this kind of all sounds a little backwards to me right now. So a
Yeah.
lot to dive into. Ran into a PDAC, want to chat about that. And for those that don't know about the PDAC, it's one of the largest, if not largest, mining conference for both investors and industry participants in the world. And that just happened a couple weekends ago. I hadn't been since the pandemic, so it was great to walk around and say hi to a lot of faces that I hadn't seen in a long time, and that was
Mhm.
including you. You were walking around. Can you talk about the sentiment on the floor there from companies and investors that you picked up on?
Hmm. Well, it's interesting, like, because every company there is the most optimistic people on the face of the earth, no matter what type of market we're in, right?
Hmm.
And so I would say the optimism was still very high. I didn't sense like an abundance or any like new generalist investors. We're just not there.
Hmm.
And that's why I think the optimism was still a little bit subdued because there just wasn't, that euphoria. Obviously, there's no euphoria,
Yeah.
but there was the same generalist people, at least people that I know that listen to my content frequently, like they were going to be there no matter what. So I didn't picture like any new faces. Like nobody reached out to me saying, "Hey, going to be to PDAC for the first time. Would love to meet up." Like
Hmm.
there was just none of that. And so it seemed like we were still communicating with the same people that we have been for the last 2 or 3 years. However, I will say I'm gonna take I'm gonna say that I think next year it will be a little bit different. I think this thing picks up steam and
Hmm.
we'll probably notice a few more new faces around
Hmm.
throughout this year into next spring.
Yeah. Where are these generalists? Like the writing, like to me, the writing's on the wall,
Well,
right?
I mean,
But they
listen,
just,
a lot of people made a ton of money during COVID, playing the market. They when when inflation was proven to not be transitory and we started on this rate hiking cycle, a lot of that money made left markets and went to the money market funds to just sit there and collect their, 3 to 6% by just
mhm.
doing nothing. Now, there's still quite a bit of capital sitting in those money market accounts because, listen, I mean, and I understand because I did the same thing. Like, why would you take such risk in a very volatile market such as exploration and mining when you could just park it in a money market account and get 5% over 6 months or 4.5% on a 2-year US Treasury, which is the safest asset in the world?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, we just saw risk move off the table. Um, and the risk has started to come back now in this expectation um, that that the Federal Reserve is going to start cutting here this year. And so we're starting to see tech run again. We're starting to see the bond market get more of a bid and yields to come down. So we're starting to see a little bit more risk. It's not going to come in this market. We're just not there.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're going to go back to the same playbook that worked in 2020, 2021, and beginning of 2022.
I think these generalists usually start piling in when the momentum is there.
Oh,
right? And
sure.
we just don't have that momentum quite yet. Like they
Well,
piled into uranium stocks, they piled into lithium stocks, but they didn't pile into the gold market and the silver market yet because just that momentum's just not there. It's going to come.
well, I would even argue that, I mean, there is momentum in uranium. Obviously, we saw a lot of lithium. Uranium, like we've seen a big movement. I just don't think it's like euphoria in uranium stocks,
Hmm.
because I just don't, obviously,
Not
I'm bullish.
quite, not quite.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
I'm not seeing people on Twitter, the Bitcoiners type of people start putting, radioactive signs on their eyeballs, replacing the
Yeah,
laser
yeah,
eyes
yeah,
or anything like that. So,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I like if it felt like a really healthy move in uranium, that pullback was overdue, but I do not think it's anywhere near euphoria.
Hmm. Well, we're starting to see some of like the bot deals, which always kind of makes me a little nervous of short-term tops,
Sure.
right? Short-term tops. And we started seeing some of those bot deals kind of kick off, and it's good for the market. And it was a great run. But yeah, interesting your comments that you don't think the generalists are quite there on uranium. I'm really big in the UTWIT space. Like I follow it very closely, and I actually think it's like one of the social spaces that has like some of the maddest people. Like they love their uranium stocks. It's
It's
quite
been that way.
entertaining.
It's been that way before the
It's
run
been
up.
that way for a very long time. And then so what commodities were the talk of the show? Did you find?
Good question. I don't, I mean, wasn't so much commodities, it was follow through. It was like, where are these tier one resources going to come from, right?
Hmm.
Um, it was nice to talk with Chris Taylor, Great Bear. I think he's coming off a year and a half after that big win.
Yeah.
Kinross put out an updated resource on Dixie. So that's good. Obviously, a lot of talk about the Vicuña district down in Argentina, really coming. And then, where is this copper supply going to come to meet the demand with a number of big projects coming offline? Cobre Panama continue to be conversation of how you replace that. Um, I think, I mean, things are just so cheap right now and so
Hmm.
distressed. It's like, if you're going to be a real contrarian, you should be incredibly excited about what's presented to you right now. I mean, I for one am like, I see opportunities in a lot of spaces. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of opportunities in gold exploration. They're beaten up, but um, I made a comment on a panel about tin, and it's kind of like kind of backtracking a little bit. Family friend had mentioned he's working on like two or three massive data centers being built in the middle of Kansas. And I was just thinking, okay, well, they Kansas probably isn't the only place where data centers are being built. And all of a sudden I started doing research and starting to see how many of these data centers are being constructed. Well, that's going to require a lot of computers and a lot of chips, which is going to require a lot of solder and glue for those chips. And
Hmm.
so I have a hard time being at all bearish on tin, given how little supply and production is actually, present. So watching that very closely, we've seen the tin price rebound in the last few weeks too, which has been good. The other opportunity that I see is silver. I
Yeah.
mean, gold's making this run up and silver's
Totally
not
lagging.
really, it's totally lagging. I mean, how many times do you see gold make a run and that gold to silver ratio actually increases?
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the silver equities, especially the developers and the explorers, are just so beat up.
Just
And
can't get a bid.
so
Yeah.
I think, and silver's got quite a bit of beta on its trade. So when it moves, I mean, it really, really moves. And I just don't think it's really moved yet to catch up with this move in gold. So when it does, I mean, I do think, listen, we're just sitting like 2470 here, an ounce. That's futures basis. I mean, $26 is in sight. You clear $26 and all of a sudden those silver
The roof comes
gurus,
off.
silver
Yeah.
squeeze, $30 and then it's 50. I mean, and I'm actually starting to read some stuff for some from big macro letter people that are paying very close attention to this. They're being patient. They're not, they're not pushing it higher, but they are waiting for the technicals to clear.
Yeah.
So silver looks really, really juicy to me right now.
Yeah. So when I walked the floor, I couldn't believe the amount of nickel stories I saw,
Oh yeah.
and then the amount of lithium stories that were out there.
Mhm.
Like those were the ones I saw a lot of. I didn't see very many silver names. I saw lots of gold, of course, but they didn't really stand out. But yeah, it was a lot of nickel, and a lot of lithium. To me, a lot of the lithium stories didn't have a lot of substance to them. There's certainly a lot of very interesting looking core in the core shack. A lot of nickel discoveries.
Mhm.
So we're gonna watch some of those to see how they unfold. Um, let's talk about this move in gold. It's
Okay.
big. It's big.
Yeah.
It's
In-
a huge breakout. It seems like it's a really muted response. Um, I like the fact that it's not hitting front page center news like papers everywhere we turn. It's just really interesting. So there must be some sort of like the market is truly believing that they're going to start cutting interest rates. What are your thoughts there? Like we've heard lots about it, right? Lots of no
I,
ways and
yeah,
but
I just don't. I think I just keep coming back. Nobody's giving me a clear answer why gold moves so fast, so big. 150.
Mhm.
I mean, it was more or less just a technical trade. If you look at the chart, you can see this thing. It was getting squeezed for the last number of weeks. I mean, I guess throughout since the beginning of the year, this thing was getting squeezed, and so it was going to go one way or the other. Luckily for us, it went the right way.
Mhm.
But you start wondering, like, the fundamentals behind this move. I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of it chasing a cut in interest rates. There's probably a lot of speculation about, the election coming up in November and getting ready for that. Obviously, if you look at the overnight stuff, China's been a buyer, a lot of Asian buying going on while we're sleeping. So that's also very positive. Um, Yeah, I just, I appreciate the move. I also gotta want to have my head on a swivel here because I'm a little skeptical on these interest rate expectations here because beginning of the year we were talking about the Fed pricing in three interest rates while the market was pricing in six. Well, obviously the market was completely drunk and was like just beyond itself. I'd never quite understood that. Why that's quite a spread between Fed expectations and the market expectations. But now we keep on seeing data come in to where we're the Fed's starting to push back, and the Fed speak people are saying one, maybe two, or one and then a pause. And so they're even backtracking because the data keeps coming back. If they're going to be continue to be very data dependent, the data that continues to come in shows a very healthy economy.
Mhm.
So, we're absorbing these 5.25 Fed rates right now pretty dang well. I mean, we keep spending money and more money and more money, like nothing's stopping us. And so, I just there's a couple of things on one hand. So I do think we may get a cut. I don't know how much it's going to be, a quarter, maybe a half,
Mhm.
two quarters. I just But is it really that much different than where we're at right now? You're talking about 5.25 going down to maybe 4.75.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
that's
so
really doesn't seem much.
you think that the day of really low interest it's over with.
100%.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
a
The
hundred
re- the
percent.
real the real cheap money is done.
It's real. It's done.
Yeah.
Um, it's yeah, absolutely.
But
Because we didn't need them.
I got a question though. Like how real do you think this data is they publish? Like I always find that they skew the numbers however they want to skew the
Oh, you want
numbers
me to
to
get
make it yeah, yeah,
conspiratorial
yeah.
here?
Let's get into this. Like and I got this theory like for the Fed to be talking about this now, I think that they're holding back something that they know is going to hit the market and much further down the road that they're starting to prepare the market for.
I mean, all you got to do is watch the revisions. You
Hmm.
know, the revisions are just really extreme, but nobody cares about it. They care about what this month's data says because then you can react in the market and trade that right away. They don't care
Yeah.
what the revise has to
Yeah.
say. But I will say that I mean there is serious concerns. I think Friday's employment numbers were a little staggering. In fact, if unemployment continues to start picking up, and let's say it does get to 4%, I'm pretty sure you're going to have a recession. I also think that the powers that be are going to do anything that they can to make sure that doesn't happen in an election year.
Of course. Of course.
So that potentially could be the ultimate why they would cut interest rates in a healthy economy and a booming market.
Start creating some euphoria going into the election just to make sure everyone's a little happier today.
Well, and think about it, like nobody's fooling anybody. It doesn't matter who's running for president. Both of them do not want a recession going into it. Well, I guess Trump could say he could take a recession and run on that against Biden, obviously that. But after November, after the election, whoever is president in January, they're
Has to
both
clean
going
up.
to be pushing for lower interest rates
Yeah. And they're going to clean up a lot of mess.
or make
That's
a
for
lot
sure.
of mess.
Yeah. So we're not going to dive into this too deep, but who do you think's gonna carry the flag?
Yeah, I don't know.
No clue.
Uh, that
Anyone's
like
case.
so
Anyone's guess.
I'm just like it's I've kind of stopped caring. I
Yeah.
mean, I do care, right? I do care, but it's just to put a bet on something like that. It's just like
Yeah.
it's really hard.
It's highly entertaining. It's like watching a cartoon show, to be quite honest with you.
Well, maybe for you in Canada, it's entertaining, but it's miserable for us down here.
Right on. So Trevor, like what you do a lot is talk to like a lot of mining CEOs on your podcast. I think you get like 1 million views a month on your Apple podcast show, which is pretty incredible. Who are some of the new upcoming CEOs that you think the market should be paying attention to with either their ability to raise capital, their ability to get the street sponsorship out there, but also know how to move these assets forward?
Yeah. Well, obviously, Scott Birdall's knocked it out of the park with Snowline Gold
Yeah, of course.
in Valley. I mean, what a discovery. Uh, I've it's a really quite a fantastic asset. They're going to keep pushing that forward. Um, I've got a deep amount of respect for Scott and his team. Uh, they're coming off a big win, and in this business, you're only good as your last deal, right? And so, I for one would I'm not a shareholder. I can't chase it up here. But as far as washing this sector, I think that's a home run hit. Things are going to get there's some low hanging fruit and exploration for them, I think. But as far as pushing that asset forward, it's going to be really challenging. Like I would love to see Scott take it, do a deal, and then go do it again, right?
Hmm.
That's just my opinion. He might be listening and telling me to
Yeah.
go climb a tree or something. But that's just my thought. Obviously, he's got a tremendous team. He can go raise capital whenever he needs it. Well, that's one to watch. Right close to him, Brandon McDonald at Fireweed
Of
Metals. I'm
course.
absolutely knocking it off the park. They have this Jack Milton, their vice president of exploration, is just like one of the brightest minds, technical minds I've ever met in my life. They are not, in my opinion, they are not getting value for Mactung and their tungsten project. So I think there's some good amount of arbitrage there. I'm a big fan of Zach Flood with Kennerland. Just knows how to explore and also has proven that he knows how to properly run a good sized exploration company and do deals and create value for shareholders as best they can. They've got a ton of cash in the bank, so I'm not worried about them having to go out and raise money. But yeah, they're doing really well. And then there's some really good explorers out there. Chad Peters in Nevada, always enjoy learning from him. Dustin Perry he's got a very interesting project up in British Columbia, Highway 37, which I wish the market was a little bit more favorable for him. But I mean, I think he's doing some really cool grassroots exploration with Highway 37, and hopefully going to discover a new porphyry system up there in the Golden Triangle.
And what company is that?
Oh, sorry, Kingfisher Metals.
Oh yeah, Kingfisher. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, a big buzz at the PDC that I heard a lot about was this Hercules silver. right?
Right.
And that district that's been discovered, and there's been just like the craziest staking rush there.
Right.
They're all starting to file their staking claims, and I'm sure we're going to see a bunch of lawsuits down the road as they overstaked each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, that had a huge buzz, and I think the market there, in my opinion, we're going to look back on that discovery and in 100 years from now, not that we'll be alive, and go, wow, that was a major U.S. porphyry discover, and we're going to see multiple mines in that belt, and it's going to be really interesting to see and watch how that unfolds.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
I mean, I think so. With those porphyries though, like you discover a porphyry, then you develop a porphyry.
Mhm.
Takes a lot of drilling and a lot of capital.
Yeah.
I do have my own, like, I think that porphyry is an incredible discovery. I have concerns about the project itself.
Hmm.
Um, I will say, however, I'm not, I don't own Hercules. I'm trying to um, interview them on the podcast pretty quickly. I am involved in a private deal that surrounds that as well.
That's
And there's a
Scout.
Scout Discoveries.
Mhm.
Yeah, Dr. Curtis Johnson. He's such a good guy.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he got that deal done. So, yeah, I think there's the thing about that area of Idaho. Like we obviously have this one discovery. It very well turns out that that discovery isn't the one that makes the district.
Very true. It could
So
be.
watch that closely.
Yeah. Yeah. That could be. Yeah. Well, Barrick's behind it, obviously, big money behind it. So they like what they're seeing. I do know that Barrick's managed to stake a bunch more ground, and
Mhm.
the likes. I think I heard Rio in around there too, staking a bunch of ground. So yeah,
Yeah.
there could be some substance to it, but good for the market, right? Like great for people to make some money, create some liquidity. We need more of it, right?
Yeah.
We need more discoveries. It's kind of interesting. It's like you kind of look around PDAC and you kind of look for, say, hey, who's got that new news, that new discovery? And I didn't really see much news out there on any major new discoveries or new resource estimates. Did anything pop out for you?
The one resource estimate that nobody was talking about that was absolute game changer is the BD district with Anglo Gold Ashanti.
Mhm.
So at BMO the week before, they dropped the 16.6 million ounces in their resource between Bullfrog and Merlin
The Walker Lane trend.
on the Walker Lane trend.
Yeah.
That makes that project the largest undeveloped Nevada asset in, I don't know, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
So that is a real number with real grade. Um, After seeing that, I went back and talked to a few people that were originally involved in early exploration there in that district
Yeah.
that sold those projects, years ago, and none of them were surprised.
Hmm.
They saw it was there. But I think it's interesting that that's a huge number, right? I mean, that's a pretty big number for a gold project in Nevada, and
Massive.
nobody was talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's Anglo, right? It's not
It's
a
not a junior that's, yeah,
not a
that makes something
junior that,
fly. And yeah.
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 But
Yeah.
I mean, that's the type of news that we need to highlight because there are a number of juniors involved in those deals to get it to where it's at now. I mean, that's the business, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the business.
I got pretty involved with this Scorpio Gold, and they're not too far south of that project. And that one could be really interesting. We just did a project visit there with a bunch of geos, and very interesting geology. A lot of high grade kicking around, and it's just like, how do you put that systematic exploration program in place to find those ounces, right? And
Right.
yeah, it could be really interesting. Um, any fun project visits that you saw last year?
What did I say? Oh, I went to Collective Mining in Colombia to see the
Mm,
Guayabales project.
yeah, they've had
Uh,
some great numbers, eh?
yeah, I was really blown away with what I saw. Um, and they've developed that even further since then. I thought it was almost a year ago that I was
Yeah,
down there, and they had these other porphyry targets, and sure enough, they've done a really excellent job of showing those and proving those out. Now it's just a matter of continuing to drill, add more discoveries. They're not going to put a resource out this year. Doesn't sound like. Ari Sussman tells me that they're going to probably do that in 2025 potentially, but it's just not going to happen this year because there's so much ground
yeah.
to be tested, and keep adding. So, uh,
If you keep adding, don't put a number on it yet. Like
Right.
that's just what I tell everyone. It's like if you just keep adding ounces, what's the point? You spend all this time and money putting out a resource estimate, then people want to value you on your resource estimate only, and
Yeah.
you take some of that blue sky out there for your shareholders, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So yeah, drill it and drill it and drill it. When you get numbers like that, keep on drilling. Like
Yeah.
just keep
Yeah.
going as best as you can,
Yeah.
right?
So I think that was yeah, I mean that was a great site visit and I was blown away with that. And I don't know if I didn't honestly I'm trying to think back. I didn't do too many site visits last year. Hoping that changes this year. I
Yeah,
did a lot of conferences last year. A lot of conferences.
COVID changed things for sure, right? Like in regards to project visits, and the Scorpio Gold one was my first project visit in a couple years, and it was nice to kick rocks again.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a lot of fun. The geology there is really cool. So,
Well, and
um,
it makes a difference when you can actually see it, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you know, like the verify stuff, like is an awesome tool to start seeing things in, 3D on your computer screen, but it's still to get the real sense of the operation and the project, you got to boots on the ground.
yeah. Logistics, topography, all sorts of things that you can't see from your computer screen. That's for
Right.
sure.
Right,
Right.
right.
So. Cool. Well, Trevor, I don't need to take up a lot of your time, man. I just wanted to pick your
Yeah.
brain on a couple of those things and just have some FaceTime with you. That was awesome. I hope my listeners enjoyed what we had to say. And where do we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Trev A. Hall. Also, so like and subscribe Mining Stock
Yeah,
Daily.
yeah, yeah.
I
Like,
find-
subscribe. Woo!
Share with like-minded people.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty active on Twitter. You can always email me, Trevor at clearcreekdigital.com. I did want to piggyback because you mentioned nickel. I guess one of the takeaways from PDAC was nickel is so down and out in the gutter. I guess if you're going to be a real contrarian and have some patience, I have thought like maybe it's time to actually start accumulating and just read that's there.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Well, Trevor, thank you so much
Yeah,
for
yeah.
your
Thanks so
time. And
much.
yeah, once again, I'll say if you like what we have to do, like and subscribe.
There you
We'll put your links at the bottom of our comments and things like that. And I'm sure I'd like to catch up with you again sometime later in the year just to see how things are going for you and see how the market's treating you.
Yeah, let's do it. Thanks, Arlen.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Trevor.